Hey everyone, we're here with another quick review. This is a game that I was anticipating more than most games that came out last year, although I guess technically it ended up coming out this year. Either way, we're talking about Ace Combat 7: Skies Unknown. I'm just gonna say it, Ace Combat is probably one of my favorite lesser known series. Ace Combat 5 in particular I think ranks pretty highly on my overall top list of games. The series is basically a perfect blend of the realism you would expect from a flight sim with a lot of the more interesting action and goofy story of something like Star Fox. And while I acknowledge there are a lot of things about the stories in particular that are really silly or stupid, they often come together in a way that makes them kind of great. The themes of the series are often very clearly anti-war, often anti-nationalism, but at the same time there's a certain level of awareness that characters who aren't participating in up-close, horrible ground war might be a little more idealistic about the conflicts they participate in. Not to mention that just having all the countries be fictional is so goofy, but I really do love it. A lot of the time Ace Combat, it kind of feels like you're playing through the story of like a lesser Gundam series. And if that's something that's up your alley, you probably want to check these games out. I won't get too sidetracked talking about the series overall, because we're here to talk about the newest game, and it's been quite a while since we had one. The last full release was back in 2011, and I would really describe that game as more of a spin-off than anything else. They tried out some free-to-play thing that I honestly never bothered testing, so I can't really vouch for its quality. But what I do know is that, despite the long gap in this series, they've stuck to their guns here. Ace Combat 7 plays a lot like 6 and 5. It doesn't really try to reinvent the wheel, and for a series that I enjoy quite a bit, I view that as a good thing. They didn't feel pressure to reinvent the series for new players, although there are some pretty good options in the menu that can help you if you're having trouble with the controls. And they didn't feel a need to dumb down the mission design either, as I found a lot of the missions to be fairly challenging, especially the ones where you have to escort targets around the map. Really, the only legitimately new mechanic here are the clouds, because they've been enhanced greatly. Flying through them can obscure your vision, cause you to ice up, even get struck by lightning, which is pretty horrifying when it happens. There's a few minor features that I would have liked to see come back, like the squad command system from Ace Combat 5 and 0, but I'm not too shaken up about it, because overall I think that the missions were very well designed. They play to the series' strengths, you have a ton of variety, and it honestly feels like the series never left. I suppose I should talk about the story a little here. It's not as strong as something like 5 or 0 in my opinion, but it is better than some of the weaker ones like 6. It has that issue that many of the games have, where the characters that the story is following aren't actually the player character, and I think that the side characters in this one, they're a little more detached from the action than I would like them to be, although they're not completely removed like they have been in some of the other games. While there are a lot of references to the plots of 4 and 5, I think that you probably won't get too lost regarding what's going on. The war in this game doesn't really involve knowledge of those games' plots, even if it does take place in some of the same locations. Really, the only thing about the story that I thought was weird was the inclusion of the convict plotline. This is something I saw in the trailers. Your character is a fighter pilot, but then you end up getting court-martialed and put into a penal squadron, so you have to fly around with criminals, and it's really stupid, but it actually works pretty well. While the dialogue in a lot of these missions is goofy, I think that the strained and messed up relationship that you have with the other pilots and with the command is actually pretty interesting. It's something that I think they should have explored more than they do, not to say that it's wasted, but I was really expecting a plot like this to encompass the entirety of the narrative, and I don't really think it's a spoiler to mention that it does not. Eventually, the plotline is kind of just dropped. Still, I think that it adds something to this game, and it makes it stand out compared to the others. The way that the side characters in the actual missions are depicted is pretty different. There's a lot more characters in this one than most of them, but it never really feels like there's too many to keep track of. I suppose I should talk a bit about the VR qualities to this game. This is not a priority for me. I don't own a VR headset or anything like that, but I've seen a decent number of people complaining about how there's only a few missions available for VR. They didn't actually bother to make the whole game programmable in that mode. And I kind of understand the reasoning for that, but we have had games like Resident Evil 7 that basically function the same when they're in VR to when you're playing with a regular TV. I kind of think it's a shame that they couldn't pull that off here, especially since that was one of the first elements that we knew about this game when it was announced, was that it would have VR. But again, not a priority for me, and since this game is on computer, I would not be surprised if someone eventually tries to put together a mod or a bit of a hack that makes the whole game playable with a headset. Again, I don't think that Ace Combat needs to be an actual flight sim, so I don't mind this at all. I haven't played these missions though, and it is kind of a bummer. I mean, why couldn't they just have some more missions for the story? Not that the story is really lacking on missions overall, I think it's a good length. And apparently there's more coming along the way in the Season Pass, which I don't really know how to feel about. It certainly doesn't feel like anything is missing. I suppose I'll have to judge those missions when I can actually see them. Still, I don't know if I'll end up buying the pass. So overall, I think that if you've played any of these games, you really should check this one out. You have no reason not to. I think you'll probably feel right at home. And if you're a newcomer, you might as well get on board. Especially since they're actually giving out copies of Ace Combat 5 right now if you buy the game on PS4. Hopefully that gets released as a proper PS2 classic soon, because I think that's an absolutely excellent game, despite severe cheese factor with the story. But, you know, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, someone did say that the game was Oscar-worthy. Anyways, that's really all I have to say about this one. This is a very strong recommendation from me. Maybe not for $60 if this is not your kind of genre, but it's definitely something to check out. I like that Namco has been on kind of a good stride over the last few months, with this and Soul Calibur 6. I could talk about the series a lot more, honestly. It's very interesting to me, and it's not super well known. So if anyone's interested in the potential for more Ace Combat videos, I guess let me know. Leave a comment or something. But otherwise, I'll see you later.